But elections are the constitutional method of deciding who should be president, not some local TA sitting in his office in downtown New York, rummaging through the statute books and trying to figure out if there's any conceivable case against him. And if there isn't, let's make one up. That is such a distortion of the American criminal justice system, something I've been familiar with for more than 60 years. I've taught 10,000 students criminal law, including several who are now serving in the United States Senate, in the White House, and on the Trump campaign team. And I think I know a little bit about criminal law historically, and we've never seen anything like this in our history. It's worse than McCarthyism, because McCarthyism looked to the past. It was an old phenomenon. It looked to see whether people had been communists in the 1930s. This kind of new McCarthyism is much worse because it involves young people, the future, the people who will be our next presidential candidates, who will be the editors of the New York Times, who will be involved in the most critical positions of government. And they are living at a time when free speech is being neglected, due process is being ignored, the Constitution is being stretched, the criminal law is being abused. That's a heck of a way to send young people into positions of power and governance. That's why I'm so concerned for my children and grandchildren's eras. I'm at the end of my era. I can fight back, but I'm worried about people today who are in their 30s and 40s and 20s and even younger, the future that they face in academia, the future they face today in science has become so distorted by politics that nothing today is not political. Nothing today is not partisan.
Let's look at these indictments. I mean, the one that you focus greatly on is, of course, the one that involves the Mar-a-Lago raid. And you say that the fault was with the Justice Department for seeking the search warrant in the first place. I thought that was fascinating. Can you explain this whole picture to me?
Yeah, and normally in a situation like this one, the government just gets a subpoena, and it's easy to get a subpoena. You serve the subpoena, and then the president or whoever gets the subpoena is obliged to turn over material. As Merrick Garland himself said, search warrants are a last resort because they are lawless, essentially. Police go into the house, search for everything, and take everything, take lawyer-client privileged material, take spousal privileged, could take religiously privileged material. And that's why subpoenas are preferred over search warrants. Now, in this case, they claim that they worried that the president might destroy material. And there's now an ongoing investigation, which is the one investigation that I think poses some danger to Donald Trump. The investigation giving immunity and subpoenaing former employees or even current employees of Mar-a-Lago to try to prove that he moved boxes or ordered boxes to be moved. I don't know whether any of that's true or not, but if it were to be proved true, that could pose a serious problem of criminal liability under obstruction of justice for President Trump. But at the time I wrote my book, Get Trump, that investigation was not ongoing. All the investigation was focused on was the failure to disclose the fact that he had classified material in his possession. And that, I don't think, would result in a criminal prosecution because President Biden and former Vice President Pence also had classified material in their possession. And you can't go after one without going after all three.
What would it look like if the shoe were on the other foot test? I find this to be extremely useful in many parts of life, actually, not just in the legal context. But this is kind of the perfect examples because, of course, we have the discoveries or disclosures from the Penn Biden Center, and we have classified information. This is ostensibly mishandling of that. And so we have these two cases, and you actually juxtapose those in your book as well.
Yeah, no, you have to do that. The shoe on the other foot test is a variation of a book written by the great philosopher John Rawls, who says that, rules have to be applied absolutely equally and without regard to who they're being applied to. And the shoe on the other foot test is simply a colloquial way of demanding absolute equal justice for all, regardless of race, gender, party, or any other irrelevant factor. And, we live in a world today where those are the factors that matter. Today, it matters more whether you're a Democrat or Republican or black or white or a male or a female as to whether or not you'll be sued or indicted than guilt or innocence sometimes. And so, we live in a post-equality world today where equity is taken over from equality. I don't even know what the word equity means. All I know in practice what it means is inequality. It means judging people based on the color of their skin or their gender or their religion or their political affiliation rather than on neutral principles. So I'm opposed to the way in which diversity, equity, and inclusion have been used to create a systemically racist country. We were a systemically racist country up through the 1950s and maybe even the early 1960s. Then we became a systemically anti-racist country from the 60s basically to this century. Now we're going back to being a systemically racist country where everything is seen through the prism of race. You can call it reverse racism, but it's racism. It's people are being judged today by race. Martin Luther King's dream has become a nightmare. Today, medical students are judged by their race and by their gender and by their sexual orientation. Scientific papers are being judged by the race of the people who wrote them rather than the quality of the science. Einstein's theory of relativity would probably be rejected today because he's a white male, a white Jewish male, in today's hierarchy of identity politics.